that whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
So, the Elohim consciousness wants to speak to us about how we participate with energy in a new way. And this is not us, right, just engaging in certain spiritual inquiries and engaging our time, right, with things. It is more about what we have been speaking before about the engagement, participation with life force, which is that vital stream of constant overflowing that brings about the delight within your being, and the delight, how it's experienced with everything else in the universe, in this game of life. And understanding that it is the inner polarities that are merged within you that actually create a constant fueling of your magnetic field. And being aware of many factors in life simultaneously is what we reference as multidimensional consciousness. As you know, many people talk about multidimensional consciousness, and yet it is not always understood within the simplicity of life. So the Elohim blueprint is about realizing the complexities of the intricate natures of life, utilized and embodied through simplicity, because it is only when you simplify all the influences that do not need to rule or govern over you that you can actually participate with life and all the energies that are fully present with life in constant overflowing abundance, that you're really, really engaging with what we call life force of spirit. There are many levels of attuning to life force. One would be seeing only life force from a very raw physical perspective, which is that which moves you, right? It is that which creates movement in your life, and movement is necessary for you to maintain the physicality of your being. However, if we had only that aspect of life force, it wouldn't be enough to sustain you in this life. It is not enough to sustain your life within the spiritual quota of what is necessary for you to actually have existence in physical form. The natures of complexities of physical form are not fully understood at the human level right now. All that is required of the spiritual, metaphysical process, which you can tune into through studying different laws, universal principles, esoteric wisdom, and yet the most subtle language of life, which is spirit, is so profound that you can only feel it when you merge all the energies at present within you, within the core of your heart, and imagine that they're swirling around, creating constant connections with yourself, your environment, and the greater multiverse that always surrounds you, and it is reflected in the core nature of your heart. The first step for many humans at this point in this simple timeline is to drop a certain density, heaviness, the burden, some expressions of themselves, which in a way prevent them to experience this greater stream of life force that actually makes life possible in existence, which we call the building blocks, the building foundations of the human, right? Which is the divine design for a human being. And those laws are very subtle in nature, and one will not even come close to feeling them before they truly drop that density, that external layout, right? That clothing, that garment, almost like when you cross the threshold of winter moving into spring, you release certain layers of clothing. And that is why this is such a complex process, because most beings want to be somewhere at a new level of attainment and evolution, of their physicality, while only working on that minimum level of life force that actually does not sustain them at the higher level of what makes one a spiritual human being, a light being that only wears the garment of a human, and yet is so much more. So this is what the new human actually means. It is a being who has unclothed themselves, revealed themselves, unveiled these densities that prevent the realization of a much greater component of life that is always at your disposal, but only available to you once you cross that threshold. So many beings want to possess a certain mastery, a certain power. And when that is seen only from the selfish perspective of maintaining themselves in a better way, so they could have more gain, more prosperity, more abundance, instead of being universally at a greater disposition for life, being at the disposal whenever you're needed, whenever life force will carry you, move you, so that you will be able to move mountains, to move others with merely your presence, which now exists within this much vaster containment of life. So it requires a certain refinement of physical density to understand greater complexities of nature. And nature is also your human existence that makes possible this next level of unfolding for humanity. But most people, as you can see, are not willing to take the steps. It's like you have a piece of cake or a pie and it's there, and the first thing most people think of when they see something as scrumptious as that is, ooh, how can I get that? Reaching with the hand, grabbing it, having it, owning it, desiring it. What a wise person would think of is first they would really feel the energetic frequency of that, which seems apparent. It looks like a cake. It has a certain sugar coating around it. Looks delicious. Looks yummy. But a wise person will tune into themselves first, always, prior to anything that is offered externally. And as nourishment, proper nourishment is so important for the physical body, it is not the essence of what helps you to cross that threshold. It is very vital. It is deeply important what you put in your bodies, because it only reflects your integrity. So do you see, the integrity of soul is what comes first, because if you do not have the integrity of soul, you will not contemplate that, whether that which you desire is truly desired from the soul. It takes great wisdom and integrity, and within that integrity, it is already natural for you to know what's good for you, what's best for you, what serves your life force. And instead giving your energy away to that which is toxic, dense, heavy, or unworthy. It's not a match. So in terms of developing simultaneously that which physically sustains the physical aspects of life force, because as we have said, there's many aspects to life force. In our work, we talk about the spiritualization or the spiritualized life force, which is the refined mana of spirit, which is all around. And yet it requires profound mastery to attain that, so that it's not taken, but is derived from within. So a wise being would say, oh, look at that cake. Am I a vibrational match? Or, what's the juiciness in me? Why is this which is offered there in the first place? How can I attune with that, right? With that aspect of life. But we mostly see the grabbing, the desiring in the majority of the populace on this planet. So the reason why our consciousness, which is pure, benevolent expression of life, is still unable to move through the collective fields is because the level of integrity has not been reached. So it's almost like the question, what came first? The egg, right? The chicken or the egg? Do we first need to refine the temple, or do we first need to develop the right sovereign integrity? It is actually both, because with integrity, the physicality naturally expands. Not always when you work only with the physical aspects of life force. The understanding that's a higher wisdom of life will be at your disposal. And in many cases, we have already shared this before, this expresses itself as a being who might possess a lot of physical vitality, almost like that raw power. You look at them and they exude that vibrancy of physicality. You know, if you imagine ancient war gods being full of that. But still, they're called war gods. They used raw physical energy to wage wars. That's what they represent. So what we talk about is that spiritual life force, the spiritualized essence of life that is spirit, is only possible for attainment, not as in grabbing it, desiring more kundalini, more spiritual power. How do I attain it? How to hold that position so that I'm finally in line with that? And instead, becoming that from internal being to develop the qualities of life, the virtues of life, which also need the opposition, which is seeing the shadows of life and where they're so present, because virtues cannot develop themselves without the shadow aspects or the negative attributes, which do not actually make you be an angelic human. So when that is developed, naturally you are participating in greater and greater reservoir of that purity, and how life force is attained through spiritual understanding that leads to illumination, which is a natural process, instead of wanting to attain it so badly. And you create so many venues, ways of working for it, almost like it's a struggle. There's a need now in these spiritual circles to attain something, to be a yogi, to master your body, or what you perceive to be the mastery of body. However, the mastery of body is first and foremost integrity of the body, so that the soul is a direct twinning match, right? Because the polarity, unification has been achieved within the body. And that means that that integrity, which is funneled through spirit presence, right? It expands that, so it naturally occurs. So we always say that the attainment of that higher aspect of what you call kundalini is not possible without a certain level of integrity. It is almost like a child wanting to reach for maturity, but they have not done the work. They have not walked the steps. So as much as many people try for that, they will not be able to attain it, because it's not in alignment with the consistency of their overall exudance of life. They don't exude that, so they have to work hard for it. They have to attain it through either breath work, other forms of cultivation, and it's not a natural result. It's a byproduct of life. The gift of life resurrected is life itself, only at a higher spirit level. So the consistency of devotion is the first prerequisite. Instead of forcing a certain experience, whether that be a kundalini activation, third eye activation, or whatever kind of activation most humans in the spiritual nowadays circle desire. So here, as you can see, there wasn't much expansion. It's just the desires of the flesh, of the material reality, have been replaced for spiritual desires. But it's still an attachment to something that you believe you need to somehow get. Like that piece of cake, it's there, I can get it. Kundalini must be somewhere at the root of my existence. I need to somehow get it. I need to gather it. But never there's a question, how will I use this? Right? Many masters have been teaching about this before. You might have a great surge of Kundalini, but if you do not know how to use it properly, if your integrity keeps on fluctuating, it's not within unified polarity, it is still dualistically expressed, it will still create not harmony, it will create misharmony, mischief even. All those things will increase the power, and yet the true power of soul's integrity and divine virtues such as love, wisdom, compassion, faith, right? Loyalty through devotion. If these virtues are not met, also through the opposition of what is not yet virtuous within me, what is still overshadowed instead of overlighted, and then embracing those aspects so they can be purified. So when beings who want the goody, the yummy, the cake, without doing the necessary step, which shifts you from needing to reach for it to owning it within you, to just see it as a mirror, as a representation of that juiciness, which is life once it's fully lived in purity of spirit through you. And so it is a simultaneous process, right? Purifying the body by purifying the mind through integrity of the soul. That's the link. That's the synthesis point. And without understanding this synthesis point, you will not be able to merge with greater aspects of energy. So once that is reached, for those of you who feel you have been walking this path for a while, in this life and beyond, there will be now for you presented a different task than those who are still owning these lesser aspects, right, of immaturity, meeting themselves in the mirror, and instead of receiving what they believe they need to or they're entitled to, they're worthy of, right? And what they need to hear, what they want to hear actually, because you always get that, but it's not necessarily of integrity. Instead of that, meeting yourself at this point of synthesis, like a new unfoldment is here for those of you who have been doing that work already. And it mostly will be involved with energy participation at this greater depth, because first, and every adept has to learn to participate with energy in a way that will lead them towards unified polarity. And unified polarity does represent the blueprint of Elohim consciousness, which is fully benevolent. It is beyond gender as you know it. And it is also a sexuality that is not sexuality that you have known it on earth, but it is a higher sexuality which creates magnificent things of beauty that you, as an extension of that consciousness, which is called the Elohim consciousness, can create with here on this planet. So it's like becoming the vessels of receptivity for this type level of consciousness. And those of you who have been walking this journey already, what lies ahead now is the synchronization with different energetic cycles. And first and foremost, because you have already learned about your inner cycles, the next step will be how do other cycles, as other spirals of life, influence me on a daily basis? Because every day you wake up, you don't just have a sun in a certain sign, a moon in a certain sign, planetary harmonizations. That is, you know, there are different alignments of the planetary or celestial bodies. You don't just have days of different solar impacts or cosmic ray impacts. You don't just have full moons, new moons. You don't just have solar winds, other energies which you have not even managed to describe in your sphere of living here on Earth. But every day, all these energies sort of compile. And when you learn to work with synthesis, you will learn to set up the energy framework within you every day and then hold and maintain that energy, because it will get more challenging for you. And the reason why we put this knowing that's so pure here in this way is because the pathway has been set. The foundation has been set in this channel, has been done. The groundwork has been done. So we can say and express only things through the individual that has already done this work. We can never talk about things that they're not there. Otherwise, as you know, they would be mental. They would be imaginings, as most people know them to be. And that's not real. So how do you do that? How do you set up a framework every day on a daily basis for this? Every day when you wake up, you all know probably that you wake up within a certain energetic feeling. And once you start to tap into and master the energy of synthesis, and as you know, this channel is born with the energy of synthesis, which is the 13th octave. And even the course we presented on the Elohim consciousness is on the 13th octave, energetic, numerical scale, actually. And this means that once the synthesis is there, a being won't just feel emanations of different frequencies in a linear fashion. So many times a being would say, what am I feeling? We don't have solar flares today, or we don't have a specific cosmic impact that increased the KP index, or we don't have a specific weather pattern or even chemtrails, things that would affect me in a certain way. But what am I feeling? And those of you who are coming, because you're gradually moving into that space, those of you who have done the foundation work, there's a few of you, but more to come. And it will be almost natural to you. You're going to feel, I'm missing something. My life has become static. It's not giving me the infatuation the same way anymore. It's not because you've stopped. It's because you moved on from what was held, right? So once a certain foundation is achieved, you get to the next stepping stone. It's like steps, right? But it's steps that go in a spiral position, staircase leading up to heaven. So it's like you're building blocks to manifesting in form the celestial consciousness. And each time you graduate from one stage, as you already know, there's first a feeling of celebration, and then there's a feeling of dullness because there's not much happening. But you know, every step has its ascent, a flat line, and then, you know, another ascent. But before you take another plunge, right, another ascent, there's a slight pause. You don't notice it because the movement you feel within your bodies is not as regulated from a minute perspective. But if you really slow down the motion, you would see there's always a slight pause there, which reflects the nature of this journey, this process. So we're very, very excited now to say that this is actually an exciting journey, because those of you who have done the foundation work, it's been quite in a process because there wasn't anyone there before you. And that's why it took a little longer. This step of this current platform felt like a very long one. Why is this flat line almost like extended into infinity? It's because there wasn't anyone there before you who took the step. And that's why the time is being, the perception of time, right? It's in your evolutionary journey, is being perceived like it's speeding up, is because there's always someone at the front line who's stepping, and it's increasing the momentum. This is how the energy of synthesis works. The more people who have managed to step into the pattern of synthesis and learning to work with it, to feel all at one-ment. This is at one-ment. It's oneness. Because 12 represents the wholeness, the completion. And yet without the 13, there is no gateway, which is called the 13th octave, which is the void that leads into the expanded state. So you're not just ascending steps in a linear way, but each time, right, you come in a new journey, the trajectory of the spiral. So this flat line, which felt now for many of you, especially right here, it felt like it's been really, really long. It required so much endurance. It's because there wasn't anyone. And you might say, well, there were other master beings here. Well, yeah, but they had different work on the planet as messengers of the light in that time. What is being done now is completely different. Each time, as you know, creation will move into its next unfolding of the spiral, like DNA, right? It spirals, but it has different stations if you measure it, intervals of energy within these spiraling movements. So it's getting excited because you're getting to that momentum, that threshold where the next step is being presented. And what was required first is the mastery of this artistry of synthesis and seeing actually how easy it is. Because it's only here in the mind that something prevents you from feeling at one-ment, which is attunement with all simultaneously, and not needing to label or name it or specific energy. It's just your body has been attuned to the rhythm of the 13th octave. You've crossed that gateway which means you're now fully capable of harnessing energy this way. So you're being activated this way, you integrate that way, and then you resurrect that energy and you ripple out the frequency. So everything you do already has the energy of synthesis there at all times. That's the next level for those of you. And if it feels arduous, we have already shared why this is so. But there's also good news and excitement, because those rare individuals who really devotedly worked for this have managed to speed the process along a little bit. So it will be easier for those who are not of the first wave. It'll be much easier. And that's why so many beings work all the time to set this into motion, to correct that which was almost like plucked out of the blueprint. So we have a DNA in its wholeness, how it was created divinely through the Elohim consciousness blueprint, that it was imbued within the seed of life and put into every creatrix design of every being that ever was to know itself in physical form, to eventually know themselves as love as essence and form, to have their own melting pot, their point of blending. And for a very short time period, if we look at the whole process, this was like plucked out. The awareness of it was sort of plucked out. But now it is returning, because it is natural for you not to raise certain Kundalini force so you could be 12-dimensional being. No, it is more like gradually being able to take more and more energy in so you can feel it simultaneously. And within your light body, all the calculations you require for processing energy this way are being made in parallel. They're being made, they're happening. You don't need to think about it. All you need to do is energetically know yourself to be this way, born, designed to exist this way, to hold that space. And every day, when you engage with energy, you participate with energy in this way through synthesis, it's you bring the law of attunement at one-ment to everything you do, however simple or complex that may seem to be. It doesn't matter. You might do the most simplest of things, but when you are in attunement with that synthesis, you're doing much more than what appears to be. Trust us when we say these words. So it is quite a process. It is not easy to go from a linear channel to multi-channel, to being a powerhouse, a broadcast station. Why we use the term powerhouses is not people who've gained a certain amount of power, now they have positions. No, a powerhouse is a being who operates within synthesis. The law of synthesis is their natural birthright. It's the inheritance. It's because all life was created through Elohim blueprint. It's just the plucking out parts made almost impossible for humans to know the true meaning of the words Immaculate Conception. And this is why we have been speaking about this so much. Our words are often, as you know, embedded in the words of the channel, and it's just a natural evolution of life. So in the times to come, guidance will be presented. We will always go as far as it is important to go in each moment. Like we said, what's not influential, it's not important, will not be presented because it has no firm ground to hold into, to root itself. It requires a certain collective receptivity, a certain amount of people who say, yes, yes, we're willing, so that this is even available to you. Do not realize things don't just fall out of heavens. Gods have fallen out of the sky. No. It takes a certain amount, what we call the life quotient, momentum, that the energy will be able to pass into the next level, the next stage of unfoldment. So we believe that is all for now. You can start every day by, instead of thinking, oh, what's influencing me? I'm going to go check in the calendar. What is today? Ooh, is this planet influencing me? Ooh, is it maybe, are there cosmic rays today? Let me go check. Start your day by fine-tuning first within you, because what you will receive externally will be just confirmations that will maybe assist you in affirming, yes, yes, you're feeling it all. But the body is the primary receptor, your receptacle of light. And these spirals, at certain points that we call gateways, will conjunct together in a way that is unseen. So you can measure planetary conjunctions, right? You can measure cycles of the moon and the sun as it's going through its passing stages. But these cycles of energy you cannot measure. There are certain systems now given to you, like from the Mayan cultures, right? Their calendars, and what's now coming is different co-creations and the unfoldment of consciousness through different people who work for that cause. But there's more. The level of the mystical approach is just feeling that. Being attuned with that, because you can have, as you know, all the knowledge and still you're not receiving the energy directly. This is how you will continue to expand. Notice that when days of strong intensity come, you do not have to suffer through them. There will be certain days when you will feel so light, you can be out in the sun the whole day. On certain days, when you're out in the sun, you will come home heavy, fatigued, because the energy is too intense. So in the morning, when you tune into the body, if you're very tired already without even participating with anything, the energy is already telling you, slow down, strong momentum today, hold the center, don't engage too much, learn to feel synchronously. And you will benefit from that, because you will deplete the body less, because you will be attuned more inwardly how you need to participate with energy each consecutive day. And maybe in the beginning stages you will feel like you're falling and stumbling, but remember, each step has a greater liftoff momentum, because you've already built a platform. You're just learning to adjust to that. We will part ways with these words at this moment. We will be back when we need to be. And thank you for listening with your hearts to these messages instead of with words. And if there's aspects that feel too complex to you, although they're very simple, simply recognize that maybe something within you has not yet experienced the energy of synthesis, and allow yourself to unwind from it, not thinking or overthinking too much. Maybe you will be coming back when it's time, and you will understand more at that time, when it's appropriate for you and your evolutionary growth. Enjoy. As always, with love, wisdom, and power. So hello there again, dear beloveds. At this point, I would just like to add a few things that I feel are very important and are also coming up at the forefront in terms of how we participate with energy. So the first thing that's really important, again, is the compassion and patience with our human development. Because you have to understand, there is always an idea where we are and understanding we have as a being. And there is the physical human process we're all undergoing. In my case, all my life force, all my devotion went into this for years and years. And sometimes people would use me as if they watch my videos and the content I share. It's not just a content, it's a way of life. It's my essence coming through. And I've dedicated most of my life to this. So I've been advancing very quickly, very rapidly in my own process of integration. However, it is a process. And it's one thing we are in a state of being, and the other is where we are in an integration process, which is a gradual shift in our evolution. And it's a constant upsurge of energy and then integration, activation, downtime, integrate, reflect more. You know, these energies are amping up. They're increasing in amplitude. They're amplifying so rapidly. And if we don't take this into account, we're losing the point of what this is truly about, because there is a world in which we're born as humans, the human world. And there is now a world that we are ourselves birthing from within. We are arising this world from within. So in many times we might find ourselves discouraged, and we say, oh, I don't want to be part of this human world, or I don't want to engage in life in a human way. These human ways. But the word human, as you can see, it's becoming very relative. It's very subjective, because we're all embodying what it means to be human in a different way. So the old human customs, doctrines, rituals, dogmas, beliefs, patterns, convictions, ways of relating, ways of functioning through duality, and then the new rising human, the divine human. And between that which is, let's say, most primitive, which basically means most unevolved, narrowest consciousness that can be, and that which is a chalice of light, a being born within divine light, which is illumination, what it truly is. There's many, many levels in between. And we always want to go from here to there. Like I said, there is almost a disease now in our society with people thinking they're somewhere and they're not. Because this inner realm that hasn't been addressed is being projected to what we call or believe to be physical, spiritually physical, physically spiritual. But it's truly not. It's a mental processing. And if we don't address it as such, we can get very discouraged. Sometimes people, as you know, they suffer from different levels of mental illness, which truly is mental. It occurs as a disease of the mind and will translate into the body as well. So that's the first very important thing, to be very compassionate and loving with the human experience. Because remember, again, we are ascending the human experience. We're lifting up the human state, the human condition, and rising it to become something more, a flowering new creation, a beautiful, precious flower that always requires watering, nurturing, sustenance. So that's the first very important component. And remember, creation is that aspect of life which is feminine. We say the goddess as an expression that's a woman, but the goddess actually represents physical form. And spirit is that which is the masculine force of creation. If we look at the nature of spirit, the soul, and then physicality. And the ensoulment process is the meeting of both. You don't get to do that without the ensoulment or the embodiment of the soul. And it's a quest, and it's a journey, and it's a beautiful journey through which, as the Buddhists say, the final teacher in life is experience. That's the wisest, greatest teacher, but we really have to allow ourselves all the experiences, because they will nourish the inner child that is becoming this triangulation, this birth of ourselves in form. So when I did recently this channeled full moon Virgo message, it was all about becoming this union, this merge of the crone and the inner child, the lumen child, and how this intertwines together. It was a beautiful sharing. So that's the first component. The second is to see and meet aspects of us that still resist the energy at present, because we tend to do that. Let's say if you wake up in a day very ritualistically, in a way, very devotedly to yourself, to your body, to everything you want to experience this day, right? And it all looks like this beautiful field of flowers, magical explorations of life, so much you want to experience, and it's all just a state of pure potential. Let's say somehow along the way we limit the potential. There's a task we really need to fulfill, and just yesterday we had this beautiful meditation on the bench, just walking by the river. And when I'm called to do these activations, I just say, look, they're calling us, let's sit, let's do this. And what came forth was, how do we still block the flow of being fully with this juiciness of life, being really present with life, participating with life in a way that this inner desire of soul knows best. This is life force that's natural, because it's this spiritualization of it that naturally leads you into life that's organic. But often when we have something right in our mind, oh, but I have to do this and accomplish this, this will become the most driving force, the strongest driving force in our life. So the example was, the desire to go somewhere, right? Let's say, oh, I want to explore this part. Instead of going always for a walk here, I want to go there. And what came through was, my mother had to go, she said herself, I'll take this package to the post. And the post is in near town because they actually taken away our post here. We don't even have a post office in the village. It's like we're cut off. And she said, oh, I really wanted to go walk by the river anyway, because every day I go here and there in the hills. And I said, okay, if you want to go, then you go. And then we somehow ended up going in the same direction, right? Although we always go separate ways because we do our own things. But the funny thing was, right, she was hurrying through, and I saw her and I said, look, let's sit. Let's really meditate and give the intention. What do we want to release? Where's this frustration coming through? Because the moment you have a goal, you start to walk differently. You start to behave differently. You don't get infatuated the same way anymore. It's like it dulls your joy. And I was looking at her. She was looking in the floor like, and she's not like that. Her true self is like a child, beautiful, playful. And I said, what changed? And it was actually that the need. Oh, you know, she said on the bench, we did the short activation, and she said, oh, I have to go because then I won't be home by the evening. And I said, no, you're not getting off this bench until you go freely, not thinking, oh, I need to go because then I won't be at home at this hour. Because you see, the driving force was no longer, oh, I want to explore this part of nature. I want to see how the path is here, you know, just like a little child exploring the potentials. The energy is always first as a potential. The explorer within is that surrendered self, which will invite that in and co-create something with the energy that's present, you know, collectively, globally, universally, at different levels that are not just your personal level within. So it changed, right? It changed the narrative of how you're being in the moment and how you're acting. I said, let's just, you know, let's go back to that primary cause. There was the reason for you wanting to go. What was that reason? Find that spark, right? And we did this activation and she found it and it was beautiful. I said, just sit. You have like infinite time. So see everything in life that's an additional something, right? This is how I am. I don't do things for the sake of them. Everything that's more mundane or trivial, I do it like, oh, since I'm already going in that direction, I'm going to do that as well. You know, I'm very practical and pragmatic, and this is how the new energy is. It merges things. We don't see things as separate errands, separate things to do. You know, people will always give reasons like, oh, you don't know, I have so much to do, you don't know. You know, whenever we say that and we get defensive with life and other people, we think like we are the most burdensome or burdened beings, and others are not. And everyone always has it easier than we do. But in fact, it's the inner state of mind that creates this. So there's a story playing out there. And in my mother's example, there was this story playing on repeat. Because I said, you know, when you have a day when it's just for you, you have no package to deliver or, you know, store to go to, how is it like? It's always open. But then why should that change the moment you have something extra to do? Why shouldn't it be just like you go and enjoy the walk? Oh, and since I'm already here, oh, I'm gonna unload the package. Oh, how great, I could do two things at once. Yay. You see, this is how the new energy feels, and it's without a resistance. Like you're pulling your strings and you're racing with time. And you know, sometimes it's good because, you know, we need to kick ourselves in the butt if we need to leave our apartment or something, you know. We need to initiate things. We need to learn that. But after we already initiate energies, we don't have to have that firm grip. And this is that flow, this constant connection, which most people continue to fail at it because the moment they have a task, they all get like little robots, right? I need to do this. And your whole attitude, the way you carry yourself, everything changes, right? The way you look at life. And then you go like, I have this to do, and then I can enjoy my day. I can only enjoy when I have no errands to do. Why? Why should that change? Okay, so that's the second thing of importance, is really learning to flow unrestrictedly. Not to resist, and notice when resistance meets up with our body. It's always creating a tension in the body. And the more empathetic, the more sensitive you become, you will clearly, easily, or instantly almost see when there's a lack of harmony. You will know when others are not in harmony. I'm this way, and I'm born with the energy of 9, which is harmony in numerology and high spiritual awareness. And I have aspects of me that will become almost like when I feel others are not in harmony, and because we're all connected, it does affect you. You can't ignore it and say, oh, that's not my business, because we are all connected and empathic. So your job is not to say, oh, that doesn't concern me, but instead of judging what's not in harmony, show the way. Give the implication of how it can be embodied. And you are that example, but you need to live it first. It's always a golden rule, as you know. So that's very important. So the third thing I want to say, it's also very important, is to know when there's intrusions of energies that are not in harmony, but are also in a way uninvited. I've spoken about this before in the previous video, right, about the astral visitations and so, but also in the physical, because Spirit always shows me when your energy is rising up, there will be more of those who somehow feel called like moths to a flame towards your energy. But in the physical, because their energy is still so distorted, because their mind is totally unintegrated, and that affects all of them, it affects their whole personality, they would project, and they would sometimes be very invasive with their energy. In the spiritual truth, because they're not very mature, they cannot harm you. So they can't flow with your essence. They can't really connect with the soul level at all. But the physical level, which is very minimum level, can still be annoying, right? Can be very invasive. And all those of you who are very high in terms of your energy, integrity, and what you already embody, you might have bits and pieces of that. I've shared with you that all my life. I had people like this. Weird people, even psychopaths, psychotic people, they just somehow sometimes show up and just invite themselves, think they can just invite themselves into my life, and they're really always talking these weird languages. People who are very psychotic, they always talk like you never talk to them, you never give these people a response, but they're talking to you almost like you're having a communication, which probably they do have in their own mind, because their mind is ill, just like in physical we can be ill. That's the problem. But for us, it's very important to know that these energies are not invited. We don't owe these parts because, you know, to act this way, or to allow them to step through our doorway. Like, you don't invite a stranger you don't feel safe with. It's normal. These people first need healing, but most of them, they're not aware because there's so much in this illusory state. They don't feel there's anything wrong. They have their own life. Their reality involves different things. It's totally non-grounded reality. You don't know what's going on in their heads, who they're talking to, how they're talking to, and you know, it's their own creation, but it's not real. It doesn't really happen. It doesn't happen at the soul level. There's no soul engagement there, no presence. It's just a mental circulation of energy that's very degenerate, actually. So I've actually created this strong protection invocation, and it's posted on my Patreon page. It's really beautiful because it works through sacred fire. It's very intense, so some people might get a little frightened and they think it's wrong to be that fierce. But the more you rise in your illumination, you will feel you have to know this. And I'll share an element of that, how the sacredness is not for everyone if they're not there. I've just gotten this beautiful book, Melchizedek and the Mystery of Fire, from Manly P. Hall, as always. And I just love these booklets because they're thin and yet there's so much in them. And I want to read you this part because in the introduction part, he talks about the ancient sacred rites, mystery schools, how the initiation rites were set up, because they were always set up to eliminate those who weren't ready, or, you know, and I want to read you this part, why this is so important, because not everything can be contained and be for everyone. Why the sacredness towards loving yourself, knowing the love in your temple, why the physical, you know, participation with energy is also important in that way, so that you know your space, you know your boundaries. You don't have fear that it somehow is soul related, but still in physical aspects of life also require that protection. Okay, because there's no separation. I want to read you this because it talks about why certain things were forbidden for those who are undeserving, because they would just squander the knowledge, they would misuse it in any way. So that's why these sometimes even very very violent, even, you know, rituals there, and why they were, right? I want to read you this part, translated into the message that I'm sharing today, why it's so important to participate with energy, also that our integrity is met not just internally, but that you're so much in love with what you've already embodied and mastered that you wouldn't give even an inkling of that away, because you know that the truth is to be preserved. So these tortures of initiation and the severe mental and physical tests were intended to serve as a process for eliminating those unfit to be entrusted with the secret powers which the priests understood and communicated to the new initiates at the time of their raising. Okay? So whatever was happening, some of it was to not reveal the secrets, secret teachings, let's say if there was torture, pain, or things like that. So they had to undergo sometimes even painful rituals if they really wanted to be initiated into the highest order. So let me see. Because of the great care used in selecting and testing applicants and the remarkable ability to read human nature displayed by the priests, there never was one who betrayed the more important secrets of the temple. For that reason, the word remained lost to all save those who still complied with the requirements of the ancient mysteries. For the law was, to such as live the life the doctrine is revealed. It is unlawful to reveal to the uninitiated the key links to the chain of the mysteries. It is permissible, however, without breach of confidence, to explain certain of the lesser secrets, a consideration of which will not only vindicate the integrity of the older hierophants, but will also reveal part of the divine mystery of man's nature. The fact cannot be too strongly emphasized that, regardless of claims to the contrary, the operative arcanum of the temple has never been revealed to the public. A few candidates who went but a little way along the path, and who either became discouraged or were eliminated because of their failure to be honest with themselves, have attempted to expose what they knew, but the inherent weakness which prompted them to betray was recognized by their instructors. Therefore, they were given nothing which could actually supply a link to connect the outer teaching with the wisdom of this sanctuary. The world within man, not the world without, was the concern of the mysteries of antiquity. Hence, we are apt to look upon the priests of old as ignorant when compared with ourselves. But while the modern world is mastering the visible universe and raising a colossal civilization, it is ignorant in the fullest sense of the word concerning the identity of that mysterious lodestone of power in the midst of every living thing, without which no investigation could be conducted and no cities built. Man is never truly wise until he has fathomed the riddle of his own existence, and the temples of initiation were the only repositories of that knowledge, a knowledge which will enable him to unfasten the Gordian knot of his own nature. Still, the great spiritual truths are not so deeply concealed as might be supposed. Most of them are exposed to view at all times, but are not recognized because of their concealment in symbol and allegory. When the human race learns to read the language of symbolism, a great veil will fall from the eyes of man. They shall then know truth, and more than that, they shall realize that from the beginning truth has been in the world and recognized, save by a small but gradually increasing number appointed by the lords of the dawn as ministers to the needs of human creatures struggling to regain their consciousness of divinity. And then it talks about the nature of the sacred fire, and that's what the book is about. Again, Melchizedek and the Mystery of Fire by the amazing teacher Manly P. Hall. Love his work, as you know. So what I want to say also is, as you know, I've shared before, my work is gradually shifting a lot. It's changing, and I always prepare in advance. That's how I'm made. So I was preparing for quite a while to inform you that most of my work will shift on Patreon. I was still doing these videos. I felt at the end of this astrological year coming to completion, I still really wanted to give my best, but it's really shifting because these videos, as you know, on YouTube were more my masculine side, which is about awareness and sitting with you, talking about the principle of truth, how to embody all these things. But I've shared other things as well about life force mastery and all that actually cultivates this journey. How do we cultivate it from within? But it was actually shared from a more masculine side when, I discussed these things with you. However, on Patreon, the content is more about Ascension, which is truly my most sacred path. It's that path of crystallization of what I truly here am to embody. And it's this beloved path, this cosmic beloved path of Illumin union, which is a union not just two people coming together, but us learning to hold the space of the masculine and feminine essences within to serve all life, because we are holding such strong space for that union. And when I do messages on Patreon, they're mostly from my more feminine side. They're more channeled, a lot of spirit guidance that's direct, archetypal. It's very much in flow. It's just different. The content is different, and I have a small group now, and people who are there, they really love the messages. They might not be for everyone, because you really have to feel in your own heart. If you feel that this Illumin Union journey is truly calling you, you feel that's kind of like pulling you and it's calling you, because like it says here, not everything is for everyone. Because I also have people who get encouraged and enthusiastic, and then they leave the space very shortly. It's just not for them, and I understand that. It's not everyone's path. It's normal. So if you feel called, I will be shifting more to that, because it is time to embody the feminine. I am in a female body, right? I express the unification of polarities in a feminine body. So I'm shifting to a very different space, and I've channeled a lot of content there already. But just now I've gotten another guidance. It was beautiful to do these channeled, beloved, almost like Venusian messages that will be very much directly channeled session about how to hold this space for lumen union at with the highest level. I don't even know. It's not about hierarchies, but it's this level that is a level of creation. It's when you become the vessel for spirit and life navigates you in a way that you participate with energy at the level of lumen union. So in terms of this message, completion, right? Participating with energy, channeling energy in that conscious participation. There's so much more to share. But as always, I can't do everything in just these few moments. So I will be moving into sharing content this way because it just brings out a different essence of me. It's more aligned, more harmonious than these awareness messages that I've been doing for so many years. As you know, every chapter has to complete in a way. Eventually it does. And it's like more and more that path, although there's less people there, but I feel more fulfilled when I channel content that way. And I do it for the purposes of the work flowing through me. And I just love when people join, when they can actually benefit from what I'm sharing, because it is naturally aligned with them in their path. So if you feel a calling, you're welcome. You can join at any time. That's that. There will be these new, I hope it will be monthly, these Venusian direct spirit channel messages. Already received this one and I'm going to do it now. This week, so I'm very excited. I hope you enjoyed the channeling as well of the Elohim group, beautiful light cedar family of the highest consciousness, which is our fully benevolent androgynous consciousness of divine humans in form, which is a lumen union. Take care, my beloveds. I love you so very much and have a beautiful day wherever you are. I'll talk to you soon.